Okay, so setting it up. Hello, and welcome to this evening's Monday night panel. Tonight's panel, we've got Vic Morgan as host as normal, and we've got Dominic Thompson who's going to join us. So I am going to bring in Vic, and then we'll bring in Dom and let them have a chat.
Pete, very good evening to you. Hope you're well.
Hi, Vic. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Welcome to rainy Devon. I think it's fair to say outside the window. So there we are.
I'd love to know what the weather's like. I really can't see it from my room. So we've got Dominic Thompson who's agreed to join us. So evening, Dominic.
Evening, you okay?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
No
I'm going to leave you and Vic to have a talk for 10-15 minutes, and then I'll come back on after that.
Right.
So Vic, I'll leave you with Vic.
Pete, thanks very much indeed. And just to say that our panel a little later will be Phil King, the former Swindon Town fullback, well over 100 league appearances, of course, a member of the 86-87 promotion side, and also a League Cup winner with Sheffield Wednesday and a former teammate of John Sheridan, manager of Swindon Town, of course. Rob Hartley, co-commentator with BBC Wiltshire, along with Andrew Hawes, and Anna Tursley, who is a long-standing Town fan and co-founder of the former fanzine, the 69er. Dominic, welcome, and welcome to Swindon Town, our first chance to say that. So thank you very much, Dee, for joining us this evening.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about you, first and foremost, because I was looking at your CV, as it were, a little earlier on today. And Arsenal, obviously, you come from Willesden, which is northwest London, I think. Were you always an Arsenal fan?
Yeah, I mean, my first football kit was a Chelsea one, thanks to my dad. But I think when I was old enough to make my own mind up, which is when I was about 5, yeah, it's been Arsenal since, and that's down to my auntie. So,
fair enough. But, yeah, why your auntie?
I don't know. Apparently, there's this story they keep telling me that whenever they would play against each other on the TV, my dad would say, Dominic, blue team. And I'd say, no, red team. Or the other way around, one of the two. But in the end, I ended up picking the red team. And yeah.
Well, you're in the red team now, of course, at the moment. Well, both with Brentford and Swindon. So you're keeping that going. You started with Arsenal at a very young age, didn't you? And wasn't it an Arsenal legend you had a little chat with that got you into being with Arsenal?
Well, actually, I was scouted around, I was 11 years old, just about started secondary school, from a scout called Michael Bruce, in which he took me down to the Arsenal training facility, Hayland in Walthamstow. And it was there that I started a trial period before signing and continuing my academy years, my development years with them.
And was Liam Brady involved then?
Yeah, he was. He was the academy manager at the time. So from when I was there, which was 11 till 14 or 15, before moving on and being replaced by Andres Yonka.
Some player to learn under though, Liam Brady, wasn't he? I mean, what a midfielder he was. Now I say midfielder because I think it's fair to say, is that your natural position? Is that where you started out as a midfielder?
Yeah, it was. I went to Arsenal actually as a midfielder, in the centre, and I was left-footed, and was just eager to work hard and impress when I was there. Obviously, a bit it was surreal being there. So I kind of just found myself picking up any position wherever they would, tell me when you're young or whatever, and just ended up finding myself in the left back position. But yeah, you're right. I did start off in the middle.
So you would be happy if John Sheridan said to you on Saturday, I want you to play in midfield against Charlton, whatever. And I think in one of your interviews, you used the lovely phrase utility player, which means, of course, you get a game in any position that the manager asks you to play in. So, and especially with a left-footed player, there are more opportunities, are there?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy now. Obviously, I've taken on, or I've had to learn the defensive side of the game a lot more, and probably that's what I've focused on a lot more while developing in recent years, and throughout my time in the academy and whatever. But yeah, I love the attacking side of the game, and that's what I started off doing the most. Of course, you always do as a kid, but if needed, I think if anyone watched the game on Saturday, that especially in the second half when we were kind of going for it, trying to get that equaliser, it was a bit more free flowing, and I did find myself in overlapping in the middle of the pitch, even ended up on the right. So naturally, what I grew up doing was being everywhere on the pitch. So that's still in my DNA, and I'd be happy to do that if the manager needs me.
We're seeing a lot of Arsenal players come through at the moment, aren't we? From the academy. Matt Smith, of course, is at Swindon. Were you at Arsenal with him? Did you ever come across each other? Or?
Yeah. Matt Smith is the year below me. But when I went there on trial, he was already there. I think he was one of the young ones there. And so yeah, from my time there, which is about 8 years, I've grown up knowing and playing with Matt Smith.
Yeah, a long time to be at a club, isn't it? And were you, when you reached the point where maybe you weren't going to get in the Arsenal first team regularly, and that decision had to be made to move on? How were you with that? Because you went to Brentford, of course.
Yeah, I think for the first time in my career, I'd actually felt in a position of power, to if you want to put it like that, because growing up, going into the academy setup, especially at Arsenal, I was a bit I'd say I was more of a raw talent, whereas like I said, the likes of like Matt Smith and other players that I played with, like Robbie Burton, Jalen Anthony, they had been there since young and already knew that way of football, which was different. It wasn't just individual showcase yourself. Arsenal, right from the ground up, practice the passing football that you see in the first team. So that was a bit it just I've completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, ask the question again. Sorry.
I was going to say, how was it when the decision had to be made to leave
Arsenal?
Oh
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
A little bit of a mind blank.
Yeah.
So I'd grown up obviously fighting for my place each time, especially with the transition of positions. And they offered 2-year contracts. So by the time it came to me leaving, I think I had a year left on my contract, and I didn't have to leave. So I found myself in a position of power. But it just came that I had some experience with the first team, be that in friendlies or just in training. But I just felt that reserve football wasn't enough for me. I think I needed to step out and get more for my development. And so yeah, that's why I took the decision. It was fairly easy, to be honest. I didn't have a lot of time to do it, but it was fairly easy to make that decision.
You had a brief foray into European football against, I know everybody probably asked you this, but Ворskla Poltava in Ukraine. I mean, that was quite an experience, wasn't it? Travelling with, I guess, a sprinkling of younger players, but also first teamers as well.
Yeah, that was my first time being around a first team match where I wasn't just watching. Well, I was, but where I could have been in contention to be in the match day squad, but just to travel out there and definitely my first time being in the first team change room during the team talk and whatever else, and being around it in the warm up and etc. And that was just a crazy feeling. It was at that point I just realized what was in front of me, and that if I work hard and just try and perfect or strengthen my strengths even more, where that could really take me. And I really, that's where it kind of dropped for me, that it's in front of me there for the taking.
I think you played against Swindon in the under-18s, didn't you? The youth. You never played against them at senior level, but I think, did you not play against them at youth level?
Swindon. I don't. Do you know what? I don't think so. The only time I played Swindon was actually on arriving at Brentford a few weeks into the season. There was a friendly, mainly for the substitutes, the ones who hadn't had much game time. So we played away at Swindon, and we had a good game there.
Fair enough. So you moved to Brentford, a club that obviously has great ambitions with a brand new ground, which looks spectacular when you go past it on the M4, and I'm sure you would say it is. And you played in the League Cup campaign this season, didn't you? Except for the semi-final, because I think that was the day after you joined Swindon, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So good experience there at cup level.
Yeah, a great experience. If you check our draw, I think, was it four of the teams before the Tottenham game anyway, we had 4 Premier League sides, that being Southampton first, West Brom, Fulham, and then Newcastle. So every game was tough as could be. And even for myself, not having much experience, and that's kind of like the start of my career, being thrown into that and having to deal with that, it's just great learning experiences. And of course it helps out. We got 4 wins out of that, so
yeah, brilliant. I mean, we should say you're only 20, so I mean, let's be honest, we're not talking about somebody who's latter step. This is the beginning of your career. So the move to Swindon comes up then. So what happened there? How did that come about?
Well, since going to Brentford, I think I've only played 14 games. I say only, but I've played 14 games, most of them being cup games, in a year and a half. And I think it's, I went in on New Year's Day, the manager pulled me into his office and we kind of had a discussion, and we thought going out on loan and getting that experience would be the best thing for me, due to the fact that I wasn't getting it at the time at Brentford. Of course, Rico Henry's there at the moment, doing really well in the left back position. So that's really tough competition. And yeah, the manager, Thomas Frank, said that Swindon were interested in taking me on loan. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to come here and, really, really develop while trying to help the team.
Well, there are debuts and there are debuts. And I think those of us who were sitting at home watching that debut on that Saturday evening thought, my goodness, this is some player. I bet you enjoyed that 90 minutes, didn't you?
Yeah, that was yeah, a bit of a dream debut. I think the only things that were missing were to score and to keep a clean sheet. But no, I think the position Swindon are in at the moment, I think that was only the 6th win of the season. So to come in and, first things first, to get the 3 points was, as you can imagine, the whole team were buzzing. And then on an individual level, I feel like I haven't enjoyed football the way I did in that game in a very, very long time. Probably since playing with my friends, just the confidence that I just felt in that game, off of every touch. And obviously one was a really good ball, if I say so myself, but and the two others were good strikes from my teammates who gifted me two other assists. But it was an amazing feeling.
Well, let's talk about that cross because, it's sumptuous. I mean, if ever a forward wants a ball into the 6-yard area, that's the sort of ball a forward would want. And that is a bit of a trademark of yours, isn't it? I've watched a bit of video this afternoon. You like to get that ball whipped in like that, don't you?
Yeah, I've been practicing a lot all the time after training, wherever I've been, Arsenal, Brentford. Prior to coming to Swindon, I've been practicing on that. And as I say, I started as a midfielder. From young, I was an attacking player. So when I can, I like to get forward into those positions from overlapping as a fullback. So when I find myself there, I've got to know what to do with it. And yeah, I just managed to produce a really good cross on that day.
Well, people were jumping out of their sofas wherever they were supporting Swindon that night. I can assure you it was an amazingly good game and a great performance. And, I've seen Swindon play for many, many years. And, to see a debut like that was quite special. So congratulations to you for that. What about then 7 days hence? You're at home against Doncaster. There's a bit of expectation, I think. And the one thing you don't want to do as a football team is concede a goal after 5 minutes. What were your thoughts when Doncaster got that early breakthrough?
It was tough. But it's not the first time I've been in a team that's conceded a goal. So you just when a team scores, you just gotta try and get together and go again, find out what you can do differently, or just try and G up the team. And don't let heads drop and just keep going for it. Find a way to bounce back.
Ironically, of course, they got their second just before half-time when I think 1-0, probably you'd have gone in thinking, OK, they're 1-0 up, but, that's not too bad. We can retrieve this. But that's a bit of a hammer blow, second just before half-time, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was. Probably changed the team talk or how the players are feeling going into the change rooms at half-time. But, I think these things happen in football and it's how you bounce back, to be fair. And I think we did that really well in the second half.
So what do you think of Swindon? I've got lots of questions coming in from people who are watching, so I'll rattle through those in a minute. But just finally from me, in terms of Swindon at the minute, here we are, second bottom of the league, in a bit of trouble. What are your thoughts?
Well, from an insider point of view, what I've seen, especially on my first day of training, I was thinking, wow, like the manager said to me that where they are in the table doesn't reflect how they are as a team. And after my first session, I really believed that. And obviously been with the team since then. And even against Doncaster on Saturday, the way we played in the second half, I think that shows that, okay, we didn't manage to get anything from the game, but that shows that, we are a team that can play really good football. And that's, for me, that's great. That's great to know and to see, because that's the way I like to play. And of course, I know we're in League One, and as an outsider coming in, you probably think, or you hear, oh yeah, it's long ball. But I think there's definitely, with the team that we've got, we can definitely play football and put pressure on a lot of teams, given that we do that from the off.
Okay, I got Steve Curtis, a question from him. I know nothing of FIFA, so I apologise for this. What do you think of your FIFA 21 rating, whatever that may mean?
The team of the week card, I have no complaints. We'll leave it
Fair
at
enough.
that.
Okay, fine, that's good. This from Anthony. Is Dominic telling his friends at Arsenal's under-23s or teammates at Brentford reserves to come down here on loan? Is it a good place to come?
So far so good for me. I mean, like I said, anyone in maybe a higher setup, especially from the two teams I've been at previously, who like to play football. Swindon's not a team that play very differently, so yeah, I'd encourage it.
Good, excellent. Now, Steve has sent this in. You'll have had a view, of course, because you were involved in the build-up to this, to Scott Twine's goal at Ipswich. Now, what do you think of Scott's overall? I mean, it was a ridiculous goal, first and foremost, wasn't it? But what do you think of his ability? Because he's being linked with several clubs, as you'll be aware. He's just come back from Newport. What do you think of his ability so far?
Well, yeah, Scotty came back in just as I joined, I think. So yeah, I've seen him just as much as the other lads, but honestly, as the goal shows and as he shows in training all the time, you know, that wasn't just a one-off. Like, his technique is crazy, and yeah, he can really pull one out the bag. I think he's a really good player.
Fair enough. And this from Pete. On Saturday, we heard you telling Brett Pitman to press. Do you consider yourself a natural leader, or is that a passion to win coming out?
I don't know. Do you put them in the same category? Because, you know, leaders want to win. You know, I think it's football talk, and whatever situation you're in, you try and bring your teammates up and give whatever information you can to help them. And Brett gives me information, and Dion gives me information, Zeki, whoever it is that I'm playing with. So, you know, it's just trying to give whatever information you can to try and help your team do as best as possible.
And finally, Charlton on Saturday, another difficult place to go, obviously. Back to the capital for you. What's your view on that one?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. I think every game that we have in the run-in, it's going to be a tough game. But, you know, I have full belief in the team that we can go there and get a result.
Dominic, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and wish you well in the remainder of your time at Swindon. And, of course, we all want those results to come because it means we'll stay in League One. That's the most important thing. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Dominic Thompson, and very nice to have him on board. Pete, are you going to rejoin us? And I think you are about to rejoin us. We're here next week, by the way. We've got an On the Sofa event, I should just mention. I think it's Jonathan Smith, I think, is our guest next week.
That's right, 25th of January, I think it is, Pete.
Yep.
It's next Monday, isn't it?
It is next Monday, yeah. So, Dominic, what a lovely chap. And nice to have him along this evening, yeah.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with him telling Brett Pitman to press. I think for, you know, a 20-year-old for, you know, or second game in to, you know, marshal the troops, quite impressive.
Very good indeed. Yes. Right, shall we bring the rest in and get on with this?
Let's do that. And I'm going to drop myself off after. Right, so here we go.
Okay. Let's see. It's going to be Anna, I think, first is going to join us. Anna, very good evening to you.
Evening, Vic.
I hope you're well. Phil King, the legend on the sofa last week, on the panel this week. Hello to you, Phil.
Good evening.
And making a welcome return, Rob Hartley. A very good evening to you, Rob.
How are you, Vic?
Very well, thank you.
I'll leave you, Vic, and I'll join you at the end.
Thank you very much indeed, Pete.
Okay.
Right, welcome along then to the Monday night panel. You all heard what Dominic Thompson had to say. Phil King, as a former left-back, part of that fullbacks union, a very level-headed young man, I would say.
Yeah, I thought he spoke very well, Vic, and I think you're right. His debut was certainly a debut to remember. He's obviously had good schooling, and he'd been at a club like Arsenal. Moving on to Brentford, obviously realises his chances were limited. Moved on to Swindon. I just hope that it becomes a successful story for him at the end of the season. There was nothing worse than coming into a team that's struggling. The debut was perfect. A bit of a welcome back to League One on Saturday. And let's try and get a sort of in between so we can have a good run in, and he helped keep us in this division.
Yeah, and it's useful to know, of course, he can play midfield, which is more than one position. So, you know, if the need be, he can be moved around the pitch, which is good. Anna, you would have watched that debut like most of us on the television. What was your view of it?
Yeah, I mean, great debut. You want to see you want to see him be able to follow up, don't you? In terms of his performance against Doncaster, he really didn't get forward and didn't get the opportunity to put in those crosses, and that's obviously one of his fortes. So yeah, great debut, but you want to see that kick on and really support the development of the rest of the team. So we'll see, I suppose.
Yeah, Rob. I mean, I mentioned to him that cross. I mean, I think, as I said, I mean, if you were Alan Shearer, you'd appreciate that cross, wouldn't you? In the first few minutes at Ipswich.
I'm sure Jai Seamy certainly did, because that was a lovely header, wasn't it? But it was a great team goal because the ball had been played back to front. Jai Seamy started the move off, but as an overlapping wing back or a fullback, whichever description you give them, it's obviously crucial that not only are you concerned about your defensive duties, but you've got to get forward and make the extra man at times. And he did that superbly well. And on the run to put a cross in like that so early into your debut, I'm sure that gave him every confidence for the rest of the season.
Phil, coming in for your debut at a new club like that, I mean, I think he joined like the day before, doesn't know anybody, does he? And, you know, how difficult is that? Because you've been out on loan, you've known that situation, you've got to settle in, know your teammates. How does that work?
I mean, we're all professional footballers, Vic. So it's not like you're going out of your comfort zone, really. Just coming out of your comfort zone in regards to your environment. But he's used to being on a football pitch. So he came in and he just went out and did his job. His enthusiasm, you know, his adrenaline rush. I mean, he's a fit lad. He's only 20. You know, and it was just, he'd have slotted in really well, as we saw. Obviously, Twine came back, scored a fantastic goal. I thought the performance level was superb. It's keeping that consistency. I mean, we can state the facts. We've lost 48 goals plus up front. You know, we lost Doherty, retired. Keshi went as well. 4 great players. You know, we're giving silly goals away at the back. You know, it's tough, isn't it? So for him coming in, although you can look at your team in training and think, wow, there's some good players here, it's got to be converted onto the pitch, hasn't it? And if you don't score goals, you don't win games. So that's the key. I mean, I've spoken to Shez a couple of times, and he always says, "Do you watch the goals? Did you watch the goals?" I say, "Well, I've watched a couple." He said, "That's terrible defending, you know," and we can see it. So, but I hope it goes well for Dominic. I just hope that the results pick up a little bit, because you can't do it all on your own. You do need your teammates around you.
Yeah, Anna, I'm just looking at the league table here, and I've got it in front of me. And Swindon second bottom, of course, they're 2 points away from being out of the relegation zone. But the one statistic that sits with me, 14 defeats already this season, with 6 wins and 2 draws. I mean, that's not a great statistic, is it?
No, and I just feel sometimes we don't really have a game plan. And our game plan, and whatever game plan we do have, if we concede early on, then that all goes out the window. And I think that happened Saturday. If we fall behind, we're extremely vulnerable to that, you know, to the heads dropping, and we really lacked some press on Saturday as well, didn't we? So it's all very well saying defenders have got to defend, which they have. But if there's no pressing further up the pitch, then the likelihood of the ball coming back ad infinitum and hitting our defence is there, isn't it? So I really think they've got to look at the intensity, how they get some press through the midfield as well as an attack, and then maybe you start to stop that rot and get some togetherness, the togetherness that Dominic Thompson talked about, which is also missing. I think there doesn't seem to be that togetherness from the team and the will to drive each other on.
Rob, defending from the front is often said, isn't it? And is there enough of that?
No, I don't think there is, Vic. I just looked at that game on Saturday and compared it to the game 31 days previous when we were at Doncaster on the Tuesday night. And Sheridan set the team up that night to be extremely solid, to try and block as many holes and stop Doncaster passing the ball, because they're a very good football inside. And in the first half, it worked. They were very good that night at Doncaster and barely gave them a chance until just before half-time. Should have been in front with a chance for Johnny Smith about half an hour in. They never took it. And then the wheels just fell off the wagon at the start of the second half. 2 bad defensive goals. And you could see the thinking was, let's go do the same again in terms of the defensive shape. And they conceded so early, such a poor goal from a throw in, because you just needed to keep tight. Don't try and bring that high line halfway up inside your own half so early in the game. There's no point trying to catch players offside. You don't even know what attempts they're going to try and do to break your line at yet. So just hold a bit closer to your penalty area. If the gap, make sure you drop your midfield a little bit further and use, as you say, your forward press. Brett Pittman on his own wasn't going to do it, but we played a 4-2-3-1. So you've got 4 players that can effectively close the ball down there. None of them did it. And obviously the high line itself you saw the example, just Okonobiri with a fantastic run straight through the centre, timed it perfectly. One person switched off in that defensive line and you're already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, to go behind so early is always a bad thing, Phil, isn't it? I was trying to think of a word on Saturday night to describe the Town's performance. And all right, there were patches, but one word I came up with was bland. I just couldn't see any, there was no excitement in it. I don't know if you've watched much of the game, Phil. I know you don't always watch the games, but what you want to see right now at this moment in time in a relegation scrap is a bit of passion, isn't it?
yeah, you can't take away the passion 100%. That's a given, I think, Vic, isn't it? I think, the guys were right, and Rob there, so, you concede early. So you've trained all week after the great result against Ipswich, and you concede after 5 minutes with a bit of a sloppy high line. Then you're looking for reaction. There wasn't really not much going on. But I think you're right. You've got to press all over the field, and it's very difficult to keep giving the ball away and just soak up pressure and not concede and give silly mistakes away at the back. So you sort of weathered the tide. It wasn't a very good game, was it? Let's be honest. But and then to concede again, I think about the 3 minutes added into the end of the first half and going in at 2 down. I think, like Dominic said, it changed the halftime team talk. From what he was probably saying, like you say, 1-0, not a great game. I have to give credit to Doncaster. I mean, they are in the top half of the for playoffs. So we come out second half and had a go and got one back. But huffing and puffing, it's difficult because I would imagine confidence. You'd have thought confidence had picked up from the Ipswich game, but it's got to play a big part. When you're down there, nothing seems to go for you. But I think 100% passion and commitment is got to be a given. Whether you're getting beat week in, week out, it doesn't matter. You've still got to play for the shirt and for yourself and the club. And if it's not to be at the end of the season for whatever reason, obviously we don't score enough goals. The top goal score is 4 goals, isn't it? Something like that. So you can see it at the other end. It's just a kind of a recipe for disaster. How you stop it, I don't know. I mean, you've got to stay together. I've been in a relegation team, been in a promotion team, and you win together, you lose together. So you've got to stick together and try and grind out results. Basically, if you don't concede, you don't get beat. And try and nick a goal. It just, Ipswich, it just seemed so easy, didn't it?
Yeah,
just 3 goals away at Bottom Road. You think, is this the start? But not to beat. They got beat on Saturday. He's got to dust themselves down, and another tough game coming up with Charlton.
Yeah, very tough indeed. Anna, I don't know. Would you just say bland was the right word? Because I just couldn't think of another word really that sort of summed up Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think bland is good. I was thinking more shambolic, to be honest. It really does feel like you're throwing a group of individuals out onto the pitch. I think we were almost lucky at Ipswich in that they allowed us to play how we did. That's not knocking our performance. I thought we were very good, but it's that consistency which needs to come. And if you are continually changing, although the personnel I know, the starting lineup didn't change, did it, from when we started out at Doncaster, but it just felt like they were individuals. They weren't working together. There's obviously this huge gap between the defence and the strikers. So you get the scenario where you're comfortable playing in your own third, which I thought we were. The opposition's obviously happy to let us knock it about at the back, not worried. And then either we play an intricate ball up front, which gets lost because we can't hold the ball up and play someone else in, or they hit it long. And to be honest, we know that Pittman is not mobile enough to chase down a ball into the corner and subsequently knock it back in. So it was massively disappointing, but it really lacked anything, didn't it? It lacked any sort of passion. It lacked any sort of press. It lacked any sort of game plan.
Yeah, and Rob, I know there's talk of a striker coming in before Saturday. Obviously, we don't know who that is at the minute. Well, I certainly don't. You might know, but I don't know. This is from Jonathan. Why can't we play 4-4-2? Doesn't work one up top 9 times out of 10. The striker is isolated in games. And I think if you think back to Paul Hart, one of the great criticisms of his time, well, among them, was the fact that he'd only play with one striker up front. And, with Brett Pittman, as Anna just said, not the most mobile of players, the ball's just going to keep coming back, isn't it, all the time? Is 4-4-2 a better option?
Well, we've got to find a way of being able to get more players into attacking positions. I think we do get hung up a little bit in terms, everyone does, in terms of formations, and when does 4-4-5-1 become 4-3-3, and we could go on like this all night. Yeah. The reality is Brett Pittman hasn't been able to hit the straps this season. He's not been mobile enough, as Anna said, if you want to play somebody who's going to be able to hold the ball up for you. But that may not necessarily just be a criticism of him. He needs to be able to have somebody close enough to him to be able to drop the ball off to. And time again, over the course of previous matches, if I think back to MK Dons more than anything else, Swindon just didn't get anyone up and around the attacking third. It just felt like they were so isolated. And Saturday, certainly in the first half, it felt like that again. It felt like we just effectively retreated into our own half. And the one thing that we used to talk about Bland earlier on, the one thing that struck me before the game started on Saturday was, come on, we've got to build on such a good result at Ipswich. We need to come out of the traps and fire at them. And if I think back to Phil's time when Lou was there as manager, the one thing that you could guarantee with that team was they would come flying out the blocks. Sometimes they'd get caught, but they would come flying at the team that they were playing against, and they just would not know what had hit them. And that seems to have gone out of the game, and certainly gone out of Swindon this year. We just don't seem to have that fire in our belly to come firing out at teams. And that's what I really wanted to see on Saturday. It didn't happen.
Yeah, which is what you said, Phil, wasn't it? I mean, I as fans, we're stuck at home. We'd rather be at the county ground shouting our heads off and trying to get behind this team. And against Ipswich, like you said, it really felt like, wow, this is great. This is where we're going to kick on from here. But what does it do to a team's confidence? You have a great performance like that, and then 7 days later, you have a performance which, well, Anthony says toothless was one word. Catriona says sluggish, I would have called it. What does it do to a team, something like that?
Well, I mean, from the euphoria of the Ipswich game, we've got Dominic's coming in, Palmer's come back, come in, Smith doing well, Jacimi doing well, Toyne has come back and got a worldie. You think, that's got to give you a bit of a lift. You work all week in training, and you come to the Saturday, and you go out there, and like Rob said, if you come out the blocks, you'd have thought they'd have been on just chomping at the bit to get out and play again, continuing on from the Saturday before. But to go down straight away, it's bound to dent your confidence and knock you back. Not having the fans in the stadium maybe to cheer you on, I don't know if that's good or bad at the moment, the position we're in the league. But there's just something, like I say, you lost in the summer. They didn't replace for me. And you get Doyle went and Yates went, Keshe Anderson, Doherty, and to lose them and go up a division is a bit baffling, really. I think could have replaced. Obviously a couple of injuries. Toyne went on loan, so to get it all to come back and to gel and just to go and spark straight away in this position we are in the league, I think it's going to be tough. It's just, can you just scrap, bite, do anything you can just to survive in this league this season, and that's all we can ask for, because at the moment it's just looking, we're not scoring enough, and we're conceding left, right, and centre. So that it like I think like Anna said, it looks a bit disjointed at times. Formations, I think it was a quote some manager said years ago: formations don't win games, players win games. So you've got to have every player pulling together and working for each other and encouraging. And if you get beat, you just got to stick at it. And at the end of the season, if you can come off and say, I gave everything, and you still go down, then I don't think people can sort of say too much. But at the moment, I don't know. I just don't know whether players are giving their all, or whether they're not good enough, or what. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I didn't know whether to ask you this, Phil, because I know John Sheridan's your mate. So, if you don't want to answer this, then I'll leave this to one side for you and then move on to the rest of the panel. This is from Mark. We are playing at home. We need to start games on the front foot, which is what we agreed on already. Needs to be said that John Sheridan is not the right man for this football club. From what you know, Phil, what's your view on that?
It's a difficult one. I can understand fans' frustration. Obviously, John's been at a few clubs. He's had a bit of success at clubs at this level. He's been a bit of a journeyman, as people will see. I mean, he was a fantastic footballer as a player. Doesn't always make you a good manager, and it's all about your players. So I speak to him fairly regular. Obviously, with the pandemic, we can't get together, so it's all talking by phone. A bit frustrated because I think he thinks there's ability in the squad. Frustrated with the goals we're conceding, and obviously not scoring enough goals. But you're limited by your selection of the players you've got available to you. He's trying to get players in. And I think you've said there's a couple of players that are in the pipeline. Obviously, he's in the hunt for a striker, I believe. So, whether he's the right man for the job, I mean, you've got to work with the players you've got. So whoever comes in, Vic, they've kind of got the same situation. You know, it's whether John is the man to get the best out of what he's got. And, that remains to be seen. So you could bring in Sam Allardyce, you know, who's good at this, getting the best out of players. But if he's not got the players and it's just not happening, it's difficult.
Anna, what's your view on that?
I think it's always going to be difficult as a manager coming in that the fans are already saying, even before he's down here, really, oh, it's John Sheridan, as if it's a negative. So he's already on the back foot I think a little bit. But obviously the management team has to take responsibility for what happens on the pitch, and feels right that you can only deal with the players you've got. I think we were expecting a little bit more of a bounce when he came in. I don't think we've seen that. And you also want to see that passion and intensity. If nothing else, if you haven't got the personnel, you still want them to put in the legwork. You still want them to close down. You still want them to press. You still want them to work together. And that's the ethos that the management team needs to bring in. And I don't think we see that. So do I think Sheridan's the man for Swindon Town? Well, definitely not long term. If he keeps us up, fair play. I think, you know, we want to see someone with a bit more of an affinity with the community as Richie Wellens had. And I think we need to see someone who's really going to work with the players he's got and bring them on as well. And I don't think that we see that from Sheridan.
Rob, I mean, obviously you're there on match days, and you know, well, I don't know. You don't get much of an atmosphere. I know you don't, because you're stuck up there and you hardly see anybody, do you? So it's difficult to gauge. But I mean, from what you can see, hear, if you can, do you get a feeling that there's much coming from the sidelines? Because obviously, you know, we've seen managers in the past, you know, they would literally go mad, wouldn't they? I mean, managers are different. They're all different, aren't they? But what's your take on that?
Well, I have to say, in the current climate with no fans in the ground, Vic, you need a Paolo Di Canio in there just to give you some atmosphere more than anything else. No, it's quite bizarre, because if you'd have said at this stage of John Sheridan's managerial career at Swindon, you'd have beaten Bristol Rovers and you'd have beaten Oxford, I can't believe we'd be having this conversation.
No.
And that says an awful lot to me about how poor the other games in between have been. And if you look back to the furore around that Todd Broadbent and Tyler Smith goal at Oxford, and how the mood in all of the football in public from Swindon at that point in time, you could never believe 6 weeks on we'd be sat in this position now. And I think there has been a disconnect. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think whether it's the way that John Sheridan comes across in his post-match interviews, whether it's the fact that it feels like, because there's no fans there, you're all remote, everyone's watching it on the iFollow, or they're listening to it on the radio, and there's just a desire, a desperate need for Swindon to do something just a little bit different, and you've got no way of expressing that. So I think there's far more pent-up frustration in every fan's body at the moment, and it probably manifests itself more so when you're watching the game to a really strong reaction either way. Either we're the best team in the world or we're the worst team in the world. And I think because you're not there to be able to express it yourselves, you just can't get that happy medium in between to properly see where we really are. I think at this moment in time, you have to say John Sheridan needs to do something really, really quickly, to get the fans back on side.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because I thought the last 7 days, Phil, encapsulates the life of a Swindon fan, doesn't it? 1 minute you win at Ipswich, you're on top of the world, you think you're the best team in the world. 7 days later, you lose to an albeit decent Doncaster side. Let's not get too carried away with this. And you're down in the dumps again. I mean, that is life as a Swindon fan. You know, you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. And there's no middle bit. We quite like a middle bit, quite frankly, right now.
Right now, yeah. I mean, you've supported the club long enough to see the highs and lows, but and today it's more evident with what's going on in the world with the pandemic. You know, football was a bit of a release for us, isn't it? So, yeah, it's a difficult one. I think he needs to get a couple of players in with as probably plain the obvious of what he's got is probably not going to be enough to keep us up unless something does drastically happen. We're 23rd in the division, which means we're the 23rd worst team, and you normally get an idea in January, tail end of where you're going to be, and obviously we're going to be in a massive relegation fight. To get 2 or 3 wins in a row is the ultimate goal, because that's what you're going to need. Is it going to happen? I thought if it was going to happen, it would have happened after the Ipswich game. In all honesty, Saturday we'd have at least got a point against Doncaster. But like I say, to go one down, then another one before half time, and there was no real thing, like Anna said, there was no real passion, was there? The closing down, it's the least you expect. And how you get that out of players, I know the buck stops with John in the management team, but once you cross that white line, if you've not got it in you, or you hide a little bit, or you're not, you don't sort of be a leader, you need 11 leaders out there, you're just going to sort of think, oh God, I just don't want the ball to come to me, I'll pass it to somebody, wait for somebody else to do something. You've all got to be on the front foot, and you've all got to stick together and give that 100% passion, tackles, up and down. Come off that pitch completely shattered. And if it's not enough, it's not enough. And you can hold your hands up and say it wasn't enough. But right now, are they doing enough? Only the players will know that. As fans, it doesn't look like it, does it? And that's for John to try and get out. Whether he's got that capability to do that. I've known him. I've played with him, and he does whinge and moan, and he's aggressive. And as a player, he comes across quite soft and dour, if you like, doesn't he? But I'm sure behind closed doors, he's having a good whinge up at them, and expressing his feelings is not good enough on Saturday. But a very, very tough ask, I think, for the rest of the season. Got to keep the spirits up and belief that we can stay up, but something does need to change, and change very fast.
Well, let me, on the subject of leaders, Anna, I've got this from Anthony White, and it says, McCormick, Doughty, Doyle, Rose, all senior players and leaders, while Yates was the squad joker who gelled everyone. There's nothing in that changing room, all indifferent and injury prone. And Oliver Holland says, we don't have a leader on the pitch. And there's a bit more here. Are we too quiet as a team? We seem to lack through the wall captain. That's from Stephen Jones. And from Anthony, a question, what role should our captain Dion be playing here? Should he be reading the riot act during training? Phil, if you think about that one, I'll come back to you on that. But Anna, what's your view on the leadership? We have lost senior players, haven't we? The likes of Luke McCormick, people like that. They've been around. They've gone now, unfortunately. We don't seem to replace them.
Yeah, I think that's right. Last season, I really felt that whilst the team were obviously a great fit together and were delivering on the pitch, there were some things that were fortuitous kind of in terms of the personnel and the dynamics that came together. So you mentioned Jerry Yates. I don't want to talk too much about last season, perhaps, but some personalities brought the team together, and some personalities were leaders, and some personalities made sure that came together on the pitch as well. And you're right, I think this season, having ripped that backbone out of the side, they weren't replaced. And have the senior players in the current squad stepped up and filled that gap? Well, maybe they're just not that kind of not that kind of player, not that kind of mentality. And how you replace that is partly with experience, partly with maybe the sort of player and personality that Dominic Thompson is. He talked about togetherness, didn't he? He talked about giving messages to other senior players in the team. But you need to look at that whole dynamic when you recruit players. You can't just recruit for positions. You have to recruit for the squad and the behaviour of the team. So, it's difficult, but we definitely haven't got that recruitment right as of now, have we, through last close season? And we desperately need to bring some players in that will contribute that to the squad. And also, you mentioned Dion Conroy as an example. I think he needs to step up. Caddis needs to step up, just to ingrain that within the team, that determination and desire and togetherness. And it's got to come from them as well as the management team.
What about that, Phil? I'll come back to you in a minute, Rob, on this subject. But Phil, what about that with Dion Conroy? Great. I really like him as a player. He's a class player. There's no question about that. And what do you want from a captain as a player? Do you want somebody who's going to really give you a rollicking during a game? Do you want somebody to talk you through it? What do you want as a footballer?
Just going back to what I was saying, obviously the recruitment side of it, quickly. They obviously knew this in the summer, and now John's come in and he's got to January. I'm not trying to defend John because he's had to deal with what he's had to deal with, but as the Richie Wellings in the staff, they lost the players they lost. It was down to them to replace. They knew what was happening, with the chairman. They knew things were coming up. They knew players were going to go, so they didn't replace them. So, John's come in to try and do a job. It's not working at the moment. Now he's got a chance of January to bring a couple of players in. So hopefully that'll be, he'll get a couple of good players in, and the ones like you say, Caddis and Conroy, they've got to step up. I thought Caddis at Ipswich was superb on Saturday. I don't know, it's just not enough. I think you need more from the likes of Conroy. Whether they've got it in them, I don't know. It's easy to be in you when you're winning and you're top of League Two, and you're winning every week and you've got the best squad in the division. When you come into League One and you're getting beat every week, that's when you see the true characters and the true personalities coming out in them.
Rob, what's your view on this? I've got a question here about Taylor Curran in a minute. And, I think I said to you on Saturday night, I'm not one to go, hell-bent on certain players, but we will discuss it in a minute. So, Lena, thank you for the question. What's your view on the leadership side of this?
Well, for me, Vic, spine of the team is the phrase that I use all the time. Spine of your team has got to be your strongest players. You need a strong goalkeeper, you need a strong centre-half, you need a combative midfield player, and you need a centre-forward who's going to score your goals. In every one of those positions in the summer, we were really, really, really poor in our recruitment. The goalkeeping situation, whilst Mati Kovac might turn into a really good goalkeeper in years to come, he clearly wasn't ready to step up at League One level. The centre-half positions, the players that they brought back were the players who were here last year, generally speaking, Romani, Edmonds, Green apart, but they all had injury problems, injury records that suggested they weren't going to be playing week after week after week. Centre of your midfield, okay, the Michael Doughty situation was unfortunate because it happened and it wasn't planned, but there was an opportunity there before the end of the window to really bring in somebody strong in that position to supplement Matt Smith and Anthony Grant. They didn't take that option, and of course Jordan Lydon was injured in the game against Charlton and didn't play for the best part of 3 months. Then in the centre forward position, we've lost so many goals. We all said in the summer, you're never going to get another Owen Doyle. That was a freak. That's not going to happen year after year after year. But you've got to go and find yourself 2 goal scorers who are going to get you 15 to 20 goals a season if you're going to be safe in this division. And it was the recruitment down the spine of the team which they didn't focus on. They brought in several players, most of them in the wider positions, but the centre of the pitch is where we've had real problems all through the season, and it's not been fixed yet.
Well, let me throw Taylor Curran at you then, Rob, because you've seen him live more than we have. And I said to you on Saturday night after the game, didn't I? I like to give the benefit of doubt to players. I don't like to slag them off because, they're the footballers. I'm not. What is your view on this? We all thought it was an odd substitution, to be fair. What was your view?
Well, I think I was the first one to verbalise that in the commentary on Saturday, because you've got Akinod and Mayo sat on the bench and you think natural replacement. And I was very interested to hear John Sheridan's comments afterwards, where he said that in training, Mayo hadn't been doing the job and Taylor Curran had. Now, obviously, none of us know what goes on the training pitch. Only John Sheridan and the coaching staff can see that. But the reality is we've seen Taylor Curran in several games this season already. And in none of those games has he actually put in a performance that you would say is capable of playing at League One level. It's not his fault. I'm sure he's doing his absolute best to try and become the best footballer he can. But at this stage of his career, he's not capable of playing at this level. And you only really want to see players like that come on the pitch to be able to get that experience in games which really don't matter. And obviously Saturday's game was not one of those occasions. Taylor Curran played very well at Forest Green in the irrelevant game in the Papa John's Trophy. Played very well there alongside a couple of other experienced centre-backs and Tom Broadbent making his reappearance. That's actually another thing we haven't spoken about.
No, I
Tom
was going to
Broadbent
ask you that very question. Yeah.
suddenly from being a cult hero against Oxford,
We haven't seen him.
we haven't seen him just that 60 minutes, 70 minutes at Crewe, where he'd set up a goal for Anthony Grant, and since then we haven't seen him again. Now, injuries happen to every player. We know that injuries are an important part of the game. You've got to be able to cater for it. But our squad is so thin at the moment in terms of genuine experience that I really think there are key players who are out at the moment. Anthony Grant's another who just need to step up again, become the player he was last year. And that team still has the ability and the potential to get us out of this problem. But when you see decisions like the Taylor Curran one on Saturday, you just have to question quite where that comes from.
Christian says Curran has a 3-year contract. Nobody has a 3-year contract at this club. Why? Well, we don't know the answer to that, so we can't really give you an answer. Phil, if you're a footballer and you know that you are getting dog's abuse from people, what does that do to you? I'm not just saying Taylor Curran. I'm saying if you were a footballer at this level and you didn't get dog's abuse, did you? But you can understand what I'm saying. How would you feel about it?
Well, it's going to affect you, isn't it? I think Broadbent was the victim of that at some point last season.
Yeah.
So and he came back in, he dug in, and he got a chance, and he done okay when he's come back into the squad. I think John Sheridan played him up front, which kind of worked. But it's difficult to single out any player when you're 23rd in the division. It's not all about one player. I think as a collective, they're not doing it. It's all over the pitch. It was a bit of a strange one, I think, Curran coming on. I think John would know that decision, like you said, if he's producing in training, but training is a bit different to playing on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's a bit of let me just, let me put that to you, because we often hear, he looks great in training. But what does that actually mean? Because we as fans don't see that. All we see is what happens on 90 minutes in a game, don't we?
Well, I mean, I'm presuming he's saying that his work rate, his aggression, the way he's playing, his attitude in training is better than the other lad. I don't, you know what I'm talking about. Can't pronounce his name there a bit, but so that's what we can think of. Otherwise, you'd go for a bit more experience, maybe, in that position. But again, we're looking at situations and we're trying to come up with a solution, and it's just so hard. It's as a collective unit. And that goes from the subs, the management team, the 11 players that's selected. If they're not on the front foot and all pulling in the same direction, if there's one slight chink in the armour, you're going to struggle. And it's evident to see that we're conceding too many goals. We're not scoring enough goals. Formations don't seem to be right. We're all picking at these issues. But how do you get them right? I mean, I thought we might have found a formation at Ipswich, and you think, well, go on then, kick on against Doncaster, and they turn up in 5 minutes, you're a goal down. And the first half was, I think, bland. We use the word you use, is bland. There's no reaction, was there? There's no one, like a Chris Kamara steaming in, getting a Steve Foley getting a tackle in. Putting your studs on someone, it's just too easy in many ways, isn't it? Just to go a goal behind and then maybe try and play where. I'm all for playing football, like Dominic said, but I think when I was under Lou Macari, the style wasn't great, but we were successful. And we were at it from the word go to the last minute. So I know football's moved on a little bit since then, but you want that passion, don't you? You want to see that from players. I think as fans, you can hold your hand up, but at the moment, it kind of doesn't come across that way.
Anna, we got 3 minutes left. Charlton on Saturday. Now, don't get any easier, do they? You can reel off the teams in League One. What's your view of that? Do we have to get a point, at least a point? Or are we kind of looking at, it's too late? What are we looking at here?
If you look at each individual game, Charlton on Saturday is obviously going to be a very difficult one. We've played them twice already this season. We got 1 point out of it, plus the cup defeat. We know they're a good side. We know they're a strong and consistent side, which we're not. So if you look at individually, you could say, well, you go for a draw, you'd be happy with a point. But every time we say that and we come back with nothing, that's when the cumulative no value hits you, isn't it? And that's why we're where we are. So we need to start playing consistently and performing consistently and picking up points where we shouldn't. So like at Ipswich, we won when nobody was expecting us to. at Charlton, we need to start showing that we can defend. We need to start showing that we can press and score, and we need to start building. We need to build a run of some sort. Otherwise, we're going to be a side that's just picking up the odd result here and there, and that's not going to be good enough.
Rob, briefly, because we are running out of time. Charlton Saturday, what would you think?
I think they're unpredictable, Charlton. I think they're one of the more unpredictable sides in the league. They are on their day very, very good, but they've lost some poor games. And away from home, I do think actually at the moment, Swindon are better suited to play in that way. To actually force the game on the front foot, as we've spoken about so often, seems to be a step too far for them at home. But away from home, you can sit in just that little bit more and hit teams on the break like we did at Ipswich. And I'm actually, strange enough, more confident of us getting a result at Charlton than I was on Saturday home to Doncaster.
Yeah, bizarrely, I am too, strangely, because that's the joy of being a Swindon fan. This from Mark. Vic, Lee Power needs to come on one of these sessions to answer some questions. I think what we basically need, Mark, is more communication from the club on a variety of things. Charlton Saturday, we would all agree on that. Phil, Charlton Saturday, tough, but Swindon being Swindon, you wouldn't bet against them, would you?
Very tough. Charlton obviously weathered, Division 1 weathered, know what it takes to stay in that division. Like I think what Rob said there, playing away seems to suit us a little bit better for some reason. Going to be tough. Vic, obviously going to any game now is going to be tough. If I was the manager now, I'd be just saying, lads, roll your sleeves up. Let's give it 100% week in, week out from now to the end of the season. Scrap, bite, kick, try and get a goal from a corner, set piece, deflection, anything. And just have a real good go. And like I said, at the end of the 90 minutes on Saturday, it's not enough. But you can hold your hands up and say, I left everything out there. And I think that's all we can ask for as supporters. At the moment, I'd probably say 2-3 lads out of the 11, maybe giving it all. But we need a bit more collectiveness, I think.
By the way, is your Amazon delivery come? Because you keep nipping out. Is that what you're waiting for? Something from Amazon?
I got the missus out, I left the keys in the door.
Brilliant.
Work for 13 hours, you can't get in.
Well, we didn't have much time to talk about Scott Twine, and time is against us. Very briefly, is he going to the Championship, Rob? Too early?
It is too early for him to be playing regularly in the Championship. I can see the possibility of a deal for a lot of money, loaning him back to Swindon for the rest of the season. But as you rightly said a few moments ago, it would be nice to have some communication about what's going on out here, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. This is from Dan. Yes, we didn't play well on Saturday, but I think a lot of people are forgetting Doncaster are a Championship team in all but name. We have to concentrate on beating the sides around us. Well, we'll see. Thank you very much indeed, Anna. A pleasure as always. Thank you very much indeed, Phil King. Always a pleasure, of course. And Rob as well. Thank you very much indeed for your help this evening.
No worries.
Thank you.
Cheers, Vic.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, all.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks again, Vic. And
Thank you, Pete.
We'll be back on next Monday where we're going to be doing an On the Sofa event.
We are. And by the way, are there not other channels you might be able to watch things on very soon?
Oh, yes, there are. So we've just started posting up all of these interviews and all of the other live streams we've done to our new YouTube channel. So you can find us on YouTube and just type in STFC OSC and you'll find us. You can get everything that we've done live streamed will be on that channel.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Pete. Thank you very much indeed once again.
Monday.